Welcome to Constructive, a podcast about construction, technology, and whatever else comes up. Hope you enjoy.
Thanks for inviting me. Really excited to be here and really excited to share my story. So long story short, was born in Kazakhstan. Um, since my childhood, I was always sort of gravitated to large buildings, right? Large mega structures. And back in the days, our country was kind of going through a specific, oil and gas boom, right? So we had to start seeing a lot of large scale infrastructural project that was happening. And while I was at the high school, I was like always looking at this, large physical structure. Like, yeah, it would be really interesting to see something tangible and some being part of something really, really intangible in that sense. So that was like initially, drew me into the world of construction. I did my undergrad in civil engineering. Um, Essentially right out of the college, started working on the construction site, started as a site inspector, was really kind of focusing more on like reinforced concrete. So really was a big fan of the concrete back in the days and really tried to understand what are different rebars that needs to be used and how do we, as the future structural engineer perhaps would be looking at the, concrete mixes and seeing how they harden and how they become like a part of the structure, right? So spent some times there, and then essentially sort of transitioned more into the world of design and engineering. Spent a couple of years working as design manager for the architectural firm. I had a chance to kind of even design myself the structural elements and that was basically the experience of me as a part of the traditional sort of a construction in the state. And then right around the age of 26, I was thinking about like pursuing my master's degree, and at that specific moment, I was really at the crossroads of thinking is like, what do I want to do? Do I want to pursue like a construction management degree with like a traditional construction management degree, or do I want to like focus on something more sort of a business side, right? And right at that crossroad, I remember I found out the program over at Duke University, which was somewhat somewhere in the middle where you could have taken multiple electives from different colleges, from different departments within the college. And that would allow you to essentially, curate your sort of a journey in a specific way. So I joined the Masters of Engineering Management program over at Duke. And while I was essentially kind of spending my college days over there, really uh, deep dive into the world of a tech and sort of started thinking around what would be that transition look like from traditional construction into the construction tech. And, just to sort of speed up some time after that, I joined a construction tech company called Katerra. Spent some time, working over at the project controls team and essentially leading a couple large projects over at Katerra, and then joined Rivian. And over at Rivian, we had sort of a similar challenges in a way, right? Sort of scaling, capex infrastructure and being able to be nimble in that sense. And having spent some time over at Rivian and Katerra sort of drove me towards the entrepreneurial path where I started exploring different consulting, gigs, and eventually led me to starting my own startup.
Dude, that's awesome. Thanks for giving like the long version. I've got specific questions about all those stages of your career, and we'll get into it. But maybe I thought we would just start with the thing that you kind of mentioned last night that I got excited about after you mentioned, and it was kind of a theme as you're talking about your career. Just kind of moving from having a love for construction, but wanting to get tech involved in that process, and how do you turn a career where you're getting practical construction experience, turn that experience into an asset for a company that really wants to implement tech? You've done it in a number of different places, and now you're trying to do it as an entrepreneur, and I bet you have a bunch of interesting ideas there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Would be happy to really share. I think that journey sort of happened. very organically in a way, because while I was studying my undergraduate degree, I never thought of myself as working in tech, because I just really enjoyed being a part of the construction industry. Love talking to folks, seeing different structures being built, and thinking about around like structural elements, and like discussing and talking to MAP guys, and figuring all those things out. But as I was kind of transitioning further and further in my career, I started to noticing how inefficient the processes were, and even looking at those different tools that we were using back in the days, right? The AutoCAD system was like pretty much prevailing. We've done a lot of used a lot of structural softwares from 1980s, 1990s, right? And my perception of the tech industry was it's somewhere else. It's not even a part of construction, right? And with that notion in my head, I've basically been a part of the industry for many years. And the best things that we've done from a tech standpoint is to build like advanced VBA enabled spreadsheets, right? Macros and all that stuff. So as I was kind of again kind of mentioning my master's degree, and when I was sort of started digging into um, what is the business side, what is the entrepreneurial side, or how to commercialize tech innovation, right? And what is the different competitive strategies that a company using, right? At that stage, I thought about, would be really interesting to start thinking about, some sort of transition in a way where construction tech becomes the core part of it, right? And back in 2017 and 18, there was no like much of companies that would be heard about, right? That we hear about, right? So I had spent a decent amount of time just researching about the industry, and one company that's kind of stood out was Katerra. And when I started looking for different roles within the company itself, right, I I only had the domain knowledge in the industry, right? I knew construction management. I know how to be a site inspector, project engineer, and I knew what the job of the structural engineer is. But connecting that dot to being a part of a technology company was really, really big challenge, right? So it took me a bit to figure out what that transition looks like, and required me to sort of deep dive into additional courses along the way, such as business intelligence, data analytics, understanding the core principles of like a product management, right, and process improvement. So kind of combining those courses together with some domain knowledge, that's where you kind of like end up finding yourself at that intersection, and new opportunities come your way.
That's so awesome. Yeah, because it's something that I've thought about a lot. I think in my current place, I'm just happy to try to influence the construction management industry and preach a little bit. There's some software out there that can help us, but it's not as much about just like adopt the software. It's about find solutions, and let's make the construction industry more efficient with these tools. And do you have insights too about like picking tech? Like how do you decide which ones to pick? Do you move fast and break things, or do you have a bigger filter in our industry?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have been a part of multiple committees when we were actually selecting different softwares as a part of both Katerra and Riven. Even though Katerra, initially started as the tech-enabled GC in a way, right? They were trying to essentially build all the IP internal in house. But as your pipeline grows and you are not able to essentially build the software in house, you start looking for different opportunities from the market, right? So when you actually start looking at the software, you always want to make sure that you have a couple of things figured out. First of all, the you know depending on the scale of your operations, right? If you have an established organization with the multiple projects that's running already on the ground, right, and a huge pipeline and big commitments, you want to make sure that the startup, or that the software that you've been using are mature enough and established enough, right? So you want to make sure that the level of you know tech support is there, right, and there are some decent tractions in terms of prior implementations, right? So it always starts with the pilot, but you want to kind of look at the scale of the software, what the infrastructure they're using right now, how many clients they have, and what are the other people talking and sharing about that specific software, right? But that's sort of number one pick. Secondly, is the always looking at the sort of implementation side, right, of it, right? How difficult is it to implement such a software? How badly or how difficult it's gonna be to implement, and how it's gonna disrupt your existing operations, right? So let's say if you have 15, 20 project managers already operating on day to day, it's really, you know, aligning with them, with your project management team in terms of what that implementation roadmap is gonna look like, right? So those are different considerations that we typically look aside from a financial side and economic side of the software at the end, right?
Yeah, having that inside view, both at Katerra and Rivian, did you see that being even part of the problem? I know Katerra was this massive, public failure, but Rivian hasn't necessarily failed. I actually really believe in that company. I hope. I know very little about it, but in any case, I'm not passing judgment on either of those 2 companies at all, but you got an inside view, and did you see tech adoption be a problem, or what lessons did you learn from it? And some of them I'm sure were really good, so tell both, but
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let me even start with the Katerra, and there's a lot of legends right around just Katerra and how Katerra operated. Even though uh, company eventually became a bankrupt, I think they had really created that sort of initial inertia in the industry to actually even say that something like this, something like tech construction, is actually possible, right? Definitely kudos to that, and what they've been able to actually do is to really pull the most talented folks from across the industry who have ever even thought about something like that, right? So they put everybody in under one umbrella and really got the best talent who essentially ended up starting a lot of different companies. Even today, some of them are pretty successful. In terms of just kind of going back to the implementing software as a company, both I think Katerra and Rivian are technology companies, right? So I think in a nutshell, they were always open to embracing a new technology, right? And in that sense, they both of them actually had their in-house development teams, as well as they were kind of open to any on-the-shelf sort of softwares. With Katerra, I think we've just tried pretty much everything that was out there available. I remember building connected was something that we for bid management we were really using for our projects. We've done a lot of Procore integrations, right? But the goal there was to use something from the shelf, but have like some sort of underlying layer of aggregation or some internal data platform that kind of pulls everything together, or a central hub, right? So in that sense, sort of Katerra had that essentially pretty much nailed down, and they were always looking at what Procore does to be able to sort of inform the development of their internal software in a way, right? So I think that's definitely some of the things you can think about as a early stage company, especially if you're like a construction firm trying to implement multiple different solutions, right? So you can always use existing solution, but you can have that underlying sort of umbrella analytical layer that allows you to aggregate all the different solutions to have that executive dashboards and executive visibility into the solution, right? With the Rivian situation have been slightly different, just because Riven was able to essentially be at sort of a more a later stage of their development cycle, right? So we had an internal effort of building our own project management software completely, right, from the scratch. And the idea was to essentially, uh, you know, have the same type of functionality as Autodesk Construction Cloud, or Procore, while have that all the features built internally, right? So, but like building a software like this, especially when your core business is automotive, right, or something else, it's really hard, right? So you can just, you know, you can like just have a multiple business divisions in a way, right, with different revenue streams internally. So while the software was basically being built, we still had to use a lot of tools, uh, you know, from the market to figure out change orders, to figure out RFIs and different other uh, construction operations issues.
I've been thinking about, not to sidetrack us too much, because I really want to get into what you're doing now too. So save that for 1 second. But I've been thinking about how we implement tech in our industry and how there's so many different parties involved. A lot of times you've got the GC buys the Procore as a part of their contract and shares it with their subcontractors, and then sometimes the owner has access, and sometimes there's a third party CM firm that has access. But then there's also scheduling is actually done in an Excel spreadsheet and in P6 and maybe some other, and then they also have their budgeting software and they have this other stuff. And I've been thinking a lot about like whether tech should be implemented, if we should think about like it being project based. I know like one of the companies I've talked to a lot is Outbuild, and I like their kind of approach to even their pricing is just project based. So you just set up a scheduling software for a project and then everyone has access to it. In my opinion, the owner's going to pay for this no matter what, whether it ends up in a schedule of values or whoever, the owner pays for it. So my thought is we should encourage owners to say like, let us take some ownership of these softwares. Tell us what's valuable to your team, but we're going to implement it at our level, and we want it to be truly collaborative and somewhat more open than it's been in the past, where even the foreman can see the schedule activity that applies to him, and even the laborer can read a submittal or a drawing if he needs to, and it's really accessible to everyone. Do you think there are changes in that, even just the hierarchy of who's buying the tech and who gets to see what? Do you think there's some innovation there we need to have?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting question to look into. Like, I have sort of been on the both sides, on the owners as well as on the GC side, and I can share you like a couple of my thoughts here. So first of all, like we gotta keep in mind that owners always some sort of you know um, distant from day to day operations, right? And there are only certain level of data granularity that they actually care about, right? So and those are maybe like even like a scheduled milestones, not even a task or subtasks, right? So when you kind of start becoming an owner, you're first of all, there's a problem of you even having like an in-house construction personnel to be able to kind of like oversee day-to-day operations of your GC. But secondly, if you have one or have an owner rep, right, there are still that discrepancy between the level of details that you care versus what GC kind of cares about, right? So I think the what I'm actually seeing right now in the industry is that typically GCs has to say what they care about from a reporting standpoint, and essentially drive that conversation around the innovation from the different tool standpoint. Um, for while GCs, obviously depending on their technological sophistication, sort of dictates how far and how deep they want to go. On the GC side, you can always argue that they are not that much incentivized to share everything that's happening on the side, right? And to have that open book relationship with the owner, right? Because that's where different marginalities and profitability is sometimes being just hidden as a normal industry, right? So there's some discrepancies in terms of just the ownership, but also the incentives to what actually both parties care about day to day, right? So I think there's definitely a dialogue to have there, and it's always a good starting point to ask the owner is like, what do you care about? What type of data you care about? What type of reports you care about? And based on that, it's probably more of a GC's call to say like what type of software we will need to be using for our operations.
Yeah. I mean, the last podcast I did with Elijah Zanger, we talked a lot about data just because I think people underestimate how important data is in our industry specifically. We think of it as this dirty, hands on industry, and data is already being collected pretty well. And I just think we're not using it good enough. And we're not discerning about which data matters. And like you said, it's kind of like um, what is it in decimal places? Like how much significance each decimal place matters. Like The owner wants to
Mm.
see like the $1 million level, and
Right.
and it goes down to like there's some people on the project that need to think about how much a nail costs. So there's all those different levels that make our industry a very unique one. But data is something I think we need to be looking at. Like I think even especially people managing construction projects need to really get smart about how to use data, how to analyze it, how to collect it, even where it's coming from. I think with AI, which is kind of a good transition into where I want to go next. So maybe you can introduce some of the stuff you're doing with AI, but also even just watching some of the groundbreak stuff. I bet you watched they're implementing their agents, their co-pilots, and um, it's exciting to see stuff like that that's everywhere now all of a sudden, but I think we need to know a lot about data too. So what do you want to talk about? Is it what you're doing at Surface? And tell me how to pronounce that too.
I just call it Surface.
Surface.
Yeah, Surface. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I really like the point that there's a lot of data. Construction industry definitely has lots of data. But the problem with that data is it's very much unstructured data, right? So you get a bunch of blueprints, you get a bunch of historical budgets and estimates, right? You have daily uh, site inspection reports. You have different signals coming up from your schedule, right? So you have all that information that's basically fragmented out there in the different silos, right? And the idea here is to be able to essentially put everything together under one denominator, right? And is essentially the core focus on what a lot of companies these days are trying to, solve, and including the legacy players that are trying to introduce a lot of different solutions in this space. So right now, I have been working for the past year on a company on a project called Surface. So we are building AI platform for repeatable project management, and kind of going back to conversation that we had, focusing more on like a owner side of the stuff, right? So our core vision is to essentially develop a platform that's tailored for the owners to essentially oversee their construction operations. And we are not just looking for one-off owners, but we're looking for repeatable sort of a portfolio type of an owners, right? Imagine you are, retail brand, QSR, charging station brand, or anything like that that has a multiple, uh, you know, similar type prototypical project that you need to scale across multiple location. So that's essentially the a target focus that we're trying to build with the solution for, right? So that's essentially what we're doing. It's been a wild journey so far. We have built our first agents. We delivered the first agent to our customers, and have seen some interesting insights. Always learning and kind of reiterating back on where we want to bring the solution next.
When I think about AI in our industry, it makes me even more excited about what I like about construction right now, which is reality capture. I think it's an untapped area that I think what AI is going to need. The predictability of construction projects is really hard right now, mainly because of stuff that's underground or already built or that we have to dig into before we know about it. That's the hard thing. And then the thing I see on construction projects all the time is inaccurate as built. We don't know what's actually there. And so I think that those two, I think there's like a really potent combination there. Do you agree in terms of should we be out there like capturing as much of that data as we can, and how do we prioritize like because sometimes I'm just like, let's send a drone on every project and just collect the data. Like that data is going to be valuable. I'm not even 100% sure how, but maybe you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, actually, it kind of goes back to our experience at Katerra. So we had our own sort of a drone division internally, right? So imagine 17, 2018, you just see the first drones out there, first DJIs that are, penetrating the market, right? So what we've been doing actually at Katerra back then is essentially creating those, daily site reports using the drone being deployed from a project management office to just capture the site orientation and essentially attach that image as a part of the monthly or weekly report, right? So that's the extent of how drone deployments were utilized back in 2017, 2018. Fast forward to what we are seeing today is I'm seeing the application of drones for together with like IoT sensors to like an insane amount of applications, right? One application I just got back last week from Trimble Trimble Dimensions conference, and was really surprised to see how many different hardware related startups coming to the scene, right? And all of them are sort of focusing on some sort of site surveillance and and different applications of a day-to-day construction project management, from like excavation and evaluating the masses of excavated earth, to actually doing a daily progress report of number of different facade structures being installed on top on the surface of the building, right? So there's a lot of different applications of drones these days that really makes me exciting.
Yeah, I'm imagining not only IoT sensors during construction, but I wonder if we're gonna be, like, pouring more of them into concrete, and they're permanent now, or, like, putting more of them just in a building that are gonna be tracking something, that will make maintenance easier, or whatever those things are. You think that's gonna be the case too? A lot of our buildings are gonna have tech built inside of them?
Yeah, I think that's inevitable end of or an inevitable path where it's all going right now. With the decrease of cost of different IoT sensors, we start seeing them everywhere right now. I know they're using it a lot in high, like New York skyscrapers. They're using in a large infrastructural projects such as bridges and tunnels and things like that. But I believe that with the, just, exponential growth of AI compute and the cost of just, hardware development, we start seeing this being a part of not only, simple single family or multi-family projects, but we'll start seeing them a part of the, building codes of how buildings needs to be built. And that will become a compulsory part of the installation process.
Yeah, you mentioned Trimble too. I actually still use SketchUp. It's my, like, yeah, it's my designing when I'm just, like, thinking out an idea about, "Oh, I could renovate my house this way." I love to use SketchUp still. I've told some people and they're like, "Wait, SketchUp is still even a thing?" But I think it's a great tool, and what else did you learn from that, Dimensions conference?
Yeah, ketchup is actually been growing, and it's one of the most sort of successful companies within the Trimble's portfolio. What I see right now is SketchUp is actually really venturing out into AI and adding AI sort of infrastructure into their
Interesting.
design applications, right? Uh, Kind of coming back to the scanning and uh, uh, scanning conversation we had earlier. Uh, they have couple of years ago, SketchUp introduced SketchUp on iPad, basically, right? And it allows you to even have the aerial image of your space and completely convert that into a 3D model like instantaneously, right? So that itself is where SketchUp is working on, is really trying to become a mobile first, but also adding AI enabled agents onto their software solution to essentially aid in designers' day-to-day operations and works, right? Helping quickly uh, you know s- sketch 3 rooms with 2 bathrooms and whatever you say, basically a prompt-based creation of different models. So that was really interesting. Actually, we went to a SketchUp to a Trimble's conference because the Surface was one of the 9 finalists of 0 to 60 SketchUp Challenge, right? So, and it is sort of an internal challenge organized by Timbo Ventures to see what are the early stage startups in the market that are actually building something in AI space. So they invited 9 companies to essentially start building some interesting use cases on top of SketchUp. And that's where we started, collaborating with the SketchUp AI team and SketchUp product team to essentially find different opportunities on how we can incorporate, our AI agents into the SketchUp ecosystem, right? So in that sense, one interesting, focus experiment for us was around building site inspection using the site inspection workflow using SketchUp's iPad feature, scanning feature, and converting that into a 3D model, and essentially being able to create a quick as build in a matter of minutes, right? So that's kind of been the use case for us.
That's really exciting. Yeah. I like SketchUp a lot, especially too, they make some of the just, like, throw something into a drawing, they make that really easy. I hope that stays. I hope it's always kind of a simple product that also has depth too. Do you wanna talk? Because 'cause I'm just excited too that you're doing this digest thing. There's kind of a community that in my view has been growing, kind of more rapidly recently of construction people talking about construction and technology and even mental health. Like, I like that there's just this community growing of people who care about each other, and you're trying to organize us a little bit. Talk about the digest and why you wanted to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so I have been uh a construction tech enthusiast for the past 5 years, right? It took me a while to find all the relevant resources to follow right people on LinkedIn and be subscribed to right people on like Twitter, right? Or X, right? So, as I was kind of going through that, experience myself, I always felt that there's just a lack of like, structured information around what's happening in construction industry overall, right? So as I was kind of digging in further and further into this space, I found a lot of interesting, very niche construction podcasts that talk about very exciting topics, right? There's like a podcast that talks about the excavation and the way they are basically packaging that podcast is very interesting and engaging. There are certain folks who are just reading out the stories, right, about construction, and that also by itself makes it really interesting. There's the whole batch of podcasts that's just talking about the venture funding and how to build a startup in this space. And there are day-to-day podcasts that just talks about operations and how to make your subcontracting organization successful and profitable, right? So there's a lot of different podcasts and out there in internet, right? So I was basically, just had a fatigue of kind of following everybody in the separate ways, right? And keep getting a lot of emails, keep getting a lot of interesting episodes, but it was really hard to sort of keep everything in one place and be able to digest that. So that's where, we kind of internally kind of thought about what could be like interesting application here of AI. And that's how the, voice of construction digest kind of came together. So what it does right now, it goes through all the podcast episodes that were released in the past months across the AEC industry broad, right? And we have, I think right now around 72 different podcast creators out there, right? Spanning from early construction, like early pre-construction to, excavation to construction management, and even capturing a bit of maybe, operations or maintenance of those, different facilities, right? So what we've done is actually we've trained AI agents to listen to these podcasts, and hopefully this will be also the part of it, right? Where
Hey, listen
it
to
just
us, yeah.
yeah,
Talk to
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
AI and tell him, like, "This one's a good one to check out, okay?"
For sure. And basically, what it does, it just like creates a categorization of different topics that were discussed throughout the podcast, and like just provides that in a form of like a newsletter, right, on a monthly basis. So, as someone in the industry, depending on where you are in your career, or if you want to branch out from construction to construction tech, or you want to just become a better project scheduler, or you are looking to raise funding, right? Depending on where you are in the industry, right, there's always 3 or 4 different interesting episodes that you can always hone in on a monthly basis, right? So we are basically kind of started doing that and building a small community around this, and we have a couple of hundred people right now uh, following our newsletter, and it's just been like 4 or 5 releases so far, but we're trying to essentially grow this and provide that opportunity for people to quickly grab a most essential information and have that being added to their bookmark to listen during their next drive home.
No, I'm excited about it too. I have this complete view of I'm not doing this to try to become famous at all. It's or rich at all. I'm not making any money from this and I have no plans to ever, but I just love that like you said, there's a lot of cool information out there. There's some people who just really care about the industry and I kind of want like some even ranking systems to it too, because I've spent a lot of time where I'm like, I'm interested in this topic. Who do I need to follow? What book do I need to read? What podcast should I listen to? And it's a lot to sift through. And there's some I think all the podcasts are fun to listen to, but some are very specific. So if you're like, oh, I want to learn about lean construction, and you end up in an insurance conversation that might be interesting to an owner that wants to know about construction insurance, like you're just like, this is boring. So like I think it's going to be great to have AI helping us figure out like, hey, if you're trying to learn about this, this guy Tyler Campbell is doing this over here and Matt Graves is doing this over here, and like go check those people out because there's so much cool content out there, and I'm glad for you to be highlighting some of it. I want to do the same. I've talked to like every podcast that I can find in this space and say if I can help you, I want to. So I think it'd be cool to also have like collaborative podcasts going on. Get some. I've got some in the works too. But yeah, you were saying too. I talked to this guy last night that called me. It's an episode that will come up soon. I'm trying to schedule it, but this guy Ken from Dig Robotics that he's been in the industry and worked for Caterpillar for a long time, and he's one of those people that gives me so much hope for like he's a guy that's got a lot of wisdom from the industry and real hands-on experience, but he wants to use tech to make operators' lives better. And it's a mission that he cares about personally because he's seen those operators, he knows what their lives are like. He knows how busy they are, and he really thinks tech has a solution for them. And those are the stories where I'm just like, somebody has to tell this. Why don't I? So thanks for being the
Yeah,
same
no,
way too, and just like highlighting some of that because that's what I'm excited about for your digest.
yeah, I don't know where it's gonna go eventually, right? We are just at the sort of early stages of providing maybe a newsletter with just a bit of a trends and insights from those conversations that took place in the past month. But down the line, yes, absolutely. I mean, adding a value to the industry and being able to help people find relevant information really quick and maybe even build some, guides around, what are the best books to read if you want to become a, Primavera P6 professional, or what it takes to be on top of change orders all the time, right? So those different topics could be, subdivided down the line, but right now it's just a simple newsletter and kind of coming back to diversity of podcasts that's out there. It's mind blowing actually, right? There are a lot of content creators, and everybody is so passionate about what they're doing. And kind of going back to the person you talked yesterday, right, about the caterpillar and the way he's looking out for tech. I'm pretty sure there are one or two podcasts that specifically focus on things that he cares about the most.
Yeah. If you're willing, I want to keep going a little bit. I just have a few other topics that I think will be quicker. Clean energy is one. I know you have some history in, and it's something I'm excited about, and I get confused a lot often about. Like, I kind of sometimes want to get involved in nuclear, and I don't know. So, what's your take on where we're at as an industry with helping the country or the world implement clean energy, and how can we as a construction industry help them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a big and important topic. Probably requires its own episode to be discussed, right? But in a nutshell, we are as a community, as the world, we're at the very early stages of just establishing those like frameworks, right? And frameworks to understand our impact and our carbon footprints and being able to sort of um, project accurately into how we want to incorporate different different solutions to be able to offset some of that impact, right? Overall, I think as an industry, we have to kind of separate. There's a clean energy, there's a climate tech, and then there's a bit of a clean tech, right? So there's just a lot of terminology just happen to have uh, been created over the past couple of years. But as an industry, it's growing fast. There's a lot of interesting innovations that's happening across the board on a regular basis. Um, Going back and connecting that climate tech and clean energy space to a build world, right? I think it's important to know that um, concrete and the construction operations is essentially a construction industry as a whole is one of the largest CO2 emission factors around the globe, right? Building a building either from concrete or from any other material basically produces an insane amount of CO2, which I don't have exact number in my head, but it's if I'm not mistaken, is around 30 to 50% of the entire CO2 emissions. So, construction industry as a whole needs to really think about it from a multiple different lenses, right? And when we talk about multiple lenses, we kind of think about, you know, what are the material mixes that we're using, right? And how sustainable are those, materials, right? Then we are going towards how do we build using these materials, right? What are different methodologies exist there, right? How to bring those materials to construction site, right? And that's where we see a lot of things around like, leads, a lot of different certifications that exist to essentially guide and make job sites more sustainable. And the final piece here is post installation and operations and kind of looking at already finished product, right? What that building looks like, what is the impact of that building over the 50 or to 100-year span, and how, as an industry, we should think about, doing the maintenance of that building and making sure that the equipment and the members and structures of that building stays intact and doesn't, cause a harm to the environment.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up because even if we're not in the energy sector in construction, we still have a role to play in reducing or just helping the environment because like you said, we are polluters for the most part, and we can work on that. But what about marketing and construction? I just see you as someone that has a creative mind, and one of the things I'm like Tyler Campbell. I've just been so frustrated with how we do marketing in our industry. Do you share that frustration, and what do you think the solution is?
Yeah, I think uh, marketing is one of the sort of largest challenges that needs to be solved in construction, and you can think about it in different ways, right? If we're talking about the marketing or like what is the PR of the construction industry as a whole, that's kind of one conversation, right? And then there's another conversation around how does construction companies, especially small medium-sized companies, can market themselves in the industry to be talent magnets, right, of the future, right? So those are a little two different marketing challenges that exist today. I think as the industry overall, we are very much dependent on a large players that do exist today, like right GCs, ENR 50 and 100, right? And in that sense, you know the public basically looks at those, large sort of players and establish certain baseline in terms of what's happening in the industry and how that's being done, right?
Or
Um,
they judge our industry based on the contractor they hired to fix their house, and that contractor, like, left the job halfway through, so they're all just like,
Yeah.
"Construction's the worst industry out there." That's what they.
Yeah, no, that definitely that day to day, that day to day. I think everybody had similar frustrations throughout their lives, right? Even if you don't know nothing about construction, you still had some situation where you had to hire somebody and things didn't work out well. But it's a big portion of a country's economy, of country's GDP, and we aren't going anywhere, right, as an industry, right? So it's all about figuring out ways on how to communicate the value proposition to the people, right, and make sure that that value is set in stone.
That's awesome. Can I ask you a random one?
Yeah, sure, sure.
How do you think they built the pyramids? Cause like, what the heck, man? Right?
Yeah, you're getting me to the land of conspiracies and see.
I mean,
Uh,
it's a serious one though, right? Cause it's somewhat weird. Like I saw this thing where they were trying to move something, a stone not even close to as big today, and they like put it on 192 wheels of a big rig,
and they failed, right?
and I think it failed too.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, so anyway, we still need to keep going back and looking at those pyramids and see if there's something we need to learn as an industry from what they were doing. Because they did, I don't know if it was technology, but something they had that we don't really know even now, I think.
I I I have certain degree of belief. The fact that we don't know our history to 100%,
I agree
right?
with that too. And
There are
that's a whole
definitely
different podcast now. But
hidden pages out there. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Dude, thank you so much. I'm gonna be like hitting you up a lot because I'm excited about what you're doing. I'm excited to be a part of this digest and just really appreciate you coming on. So reach out, but do you want to tell anybody how to get a hold of you or what you want them to check out?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, always happy to chat. I'm out there in LinkedIn. You can always find me, Omar Zhan, and happy to chat with the folks out there. If you're interested about the digest, just check my LinkedIn page. I have the link over there. And yeah, if you're building, creating content in this space, and interested in like some ways to chat about the industry and see how we can help each other. I mean, I was always available out there, and I really like people creating valuable content to folks.
It's been great. Thanks, man.